everybody. This is part 2 of the wall paneling for the media wall. And one of the first things we need to do is we need to establish our center line. And for this wall it's 107.5 inches, 107.5, which puts the center line at 53 7/8. So we go ahead, mark out center, and plumb your whole line. That'll give you a reference point the whole time so you don't lose it as you start covering it as we work the paneling. This is going to be simple wainscoting. We're going to put plywood and then trim it out with some white wood and make some faux panels. And one of the first things we need to do is find out where our studs are. And there's several reasons for this. The first being that we need to make sure that when we mount our television that we're mounting it to the studs. That way our wall system is carrying the load and it's not attached into just the drywall. Even though we'll have 3/4 inch paneling on this, we want to make sure that the paneling is attached to the studs as well. So with the articulating TV mount, this particular model was actually articulating this way if this tilted down. So I took this bolt off and was able to flip it, and now it will articulate towards the living space and down towards the couches. So the next thing you want to understand is that this center line of this plate is what's important to go to the center of your TV. This mounting bracket is offset. So when you're mounting this to the wall, you want to make sure that this is centered. Okay. So that's going to be great because that's going to almost pretty much put us right here on this stud. It might be a little over. So maybe we'll put some blocking in there, or maybe we'll judge how well our paneling, tongue and groove paneling goes on there. So that's the first reason why you want to mark your studs. Second reason why you want to mark your studs is when you take off your base molding, if you're going to reuse it, what you want to do is just cut right at the top where it meets the wall and cut out any paint or caulk, and that way you won't tear up any of the finished wall, whether it's paint or wallpaper. For this instance, we're not going to really worry about that, but I'm going to reuse it in another area of the house, so I don't want to damage it. Which is why you want to make sure that you know where your stud is, because when you go to pry, if you pry against where the stud is, it won't punch a hole through. So that'll just save you a lot of time down the road. You won't have to do any patchwork and sanding and priming and painting. You can just move on with your project. The next reason is because you're going to want to know where your fasteners go. So for the paneling, since it's going to be paint grade, we're going to go with a 15 gauge nail. And then the trim will come back with an 18 gauge nail. I'll show you some tricks on how to cover up those holes without a ton of wood putty. So the point being is that you want to make sure that you're fastening your trim to your framing, and that's going to do a couple things. One is you're going to know that you're hitting solid structure. Okay. Two is we have electrical going through here. Now I know there's no plumbing on this wall, but there could also be plumbing. And you don't want to have an instance where you're puncturing an electrical line or a plumbing line and creating a short in the circuit, potentially a wall fire. Worst case scenario is you have to have an electrician come out and chase the short, and then you end up with holes in your walls and a good couple $1,000 bills. If it's a plumbing line, you can end up with a lot of water damage and just complete embarrassment. So with that being said, we've got all of our studs marked out. One trick is that if you find your electrical box or your switch and it's done to code, you'll know that the box is attached to a stud. The other way to do it is go outside of your window or your door where you know that there's a start of a wall or a jack stud. So what we'll do is you can just come center off of that and find 16, or you just go with your stud finder, and that'll confirm it. Okay, so I've done that. I figured out where our center line is here for our 3 panels. It's a 9-foot wall. I'll do 3 3-foot panels, So I want to make sure that my first center panel is centered so that there's no odd offcuts on either side. Then we'll want to make sure that we find out where our wainscoting is. That way we know where to put the paneling up to. This, for our purpose, is just going to be driven off of our entertainment table and our components. So with that being said, that's where the wainscoting is going to end in the black. Our paneling, Sapele paneling, is going to start here. So now I want to make sure that I'm finding center for the television, because I want this exposed face of the paneling to match the exposed face up top. So with that, we have a 50-inch TV. It's 44.5 by 26. So I've gone ahead and just marked out on the wall where that's gonna put us, and that way I have a reference while I'm installing, so that I know a couple things that I can go ahead when I'm installing the paneling, and I know it's going to be behind a television, is I can come in with some screws and just face screw them into the stud so that I know I've got 100% positive connection. Okay, so I think that about covers it. We just need to get to work here. So enough of my yapping. Let's run up to the shop. Let's rip some paneling boards and let's get to nailing so that we can move this along. All right. Now, because this is paint grade, we can go a little bit strong on some of our nails, which will be good because it'll make sure that it's nice and fastened. And we'll come through here and we'll do a little sanding and fill in our holes. So the next phase of this is to make our faux panels is we need to go ahead and trim it out. So we're going to head up to the shop and we're going to rip a couple boards down and we are going to make our own trim so that we save money, and also when we go throughout the house in the future we'll be able to match this because we have the router bit. Instead of having to find the trim in the local lumber store or a big box store and pay who knows what, $1 a linear foot, we can just go ahead and make it. So because we have the router bit, we're good to go. We can make it in any dimension we want as well, so we can even copy this on a different spot and it'll go. So let's go head up to the shop and rip some boards. So we're out here in the shop and we're about to make some trim, and the reason we're going to do this is by going out and investing in a router and a bit, we're basically going to be able to make as much trim as we want. So instead of it being a finite amount and having to run back and forth to the store if we run out, we know we can just rip and run. So we can make this in pretty much any dimension or face that we want. We can combine it with other bits and make some more decorative trim, but this is just a way to save money. So the router, I don't know, about $100-200 depending on what model you get, and then this bit by Freud was $50, I want to say. I bought it a long time ago and it's still working for me. It's nice sharp carbide. They make a great router bit. It's worth the investment, and I've since recouped that money in many different furniture builds and trim jobs. So this is the profile that makes. This is a small piece, so it has a little bit of imperfections. That's just doing it by hand instead of on the table. That's just going to happen, but that's the profile. And then you can install it as base cap, drip cap, and in this case we're going to use it for panel trim. So this just allows us to keep making as much as we want and just save some money, because we can use a lot of scraps in doing this. And we can also do it in different materials. So if we want to make this in VG fir, oak, mahogany, some of the Sapele we're using, we'll be able to just rip this trim and the profile will match throughout, and you can integrate different species, and we can make our own scribe blocks so that we can trim out the ceiling and make it look decorative. So it's just a much better way than relying on the big box stores and your local lumberyard to overcharge you for materials that you're going to go through very rapidly. So let's get these boards ripped and routed and we'll get them installed.